It is my pleasure to welcome Dan Chesbro. Dan is an ordained minister and spiritual leader whose work has taken him all over the United States. It's taken him to Canada, to Europe, India, Tibet, and Egypt. He has a long history serving the LHSC community, and Dan brings his intuitive and psychic gifts to his work, and he's helped many people along his journey. Please help me welcome Dan.
I didn't need to use the mic, right? Oh, good. It's hard enough with two hands, but I did like the gal with all the 8 arms or whatever, you know. Forgive me, I need to sit for a little bit. The center of gravity helps my head to stay up. 4 years ago, I was getting ready for the holidays, and I fell off a kitchen counter and hit the back of my head on a floor and bounced like a football or whatever, you know. And 4 years later, I was shoveling snow on one of our very snowy days we had this winter, and all of a sudden I couldn't pick my head up. It was just lodged right on my chest. And I went to chiropractors, acupuncturists, herbal people. Who's the pain in the neck in your life? You know what I'm saying. That one was easy. But finally, God has a way of leading you to where you need to go. You know that. So I ended up with a close friend of mine whose daughter had found a chiropractor in Rochester who'd just come in there from Canada, who specialized in C1, which is the atlas wedge. It's the only bone that is not fused to your spinal column, okay? And so your head sits on that. Well, mine wasn't. You know, mine had gotten dislodged from the incident, and it took 4 years for it to finally tip forward. So he said, this is going to be a real challenge. I love this. So he uses math and physics and x-rays and an extremely gentle, practical touching, you know, on the neck. And after 3 adjustments on the first day, my head went back onto the wedge. So I was just there 3 days ago, and he showed me the new x-rays, which show that my head is now back where it needs to be. And it's the first time in 4 years that I've had enough cerebrospinal fluid going in and out of my body the way it's supposed to. He said, I can't believe you didn't die from the incident. I can't believe that your body organs didn't disintegrate because they've not been being fed for 4 years. Hey, Yogananda has a story in there about a woman who lives on, water and air. So this is easy. So anyway, he's 28 years old. I was so impressed, and he's just such a sincere child. Now, his career started as a kickboxer and a boxer, so he had multiple head injuries. And then he went to Palmer, the chiropractic school. You've heard of Palmer. And he thought, well, that's where I'll get my cure. Well, it didn't work. So finally he shadowed a chiropractor who did C1, and he learned from her, and then he started the cure. So he has only been cured for about 2 years when I met him. You know, and to see him, you would have no idea, except he's got a little bump in his nose from having been a fighter, you know. But, and he's also, thank God, very spiritual. You know, he said, part of this cure is your ability to meditate and to focus on your higher power. I said, oh, thank God. Rather than, oh, we don't believe in that stuff, you know, this kind of thing. So it's a whole combination of diet, walking, doing some exercises. He didn't adjust me the last time I went. He said, you don't need it now. We're just going to keep strengthening these muscles so you can keep your head up. So when I come here next year, I won't be, you know, having to do this while I'm talking. I said, oh, that's very interesting. It's a lot of fun. I have some wonderful things to share with you this morning. Most of these are going to be really very true stories. Those are the best. You know, laced with that is going to be some concepts on Buddhism that I've come to learn to enjoy, and I'm sure you have too, some of you. So why don't we just get started? I'm going to read one passage. I was asking the boss, whatever, you know, what is it should I focus on? You know, because I can do just about anything. You all can. And so I found this passage, and I opened it up, and I thought it was really quite on the spot, because I was a bit of in a quandary, you know, well, what does one wear to these things? Because this church is so progressive, you know, that you could come in here probably naked, no one would care, you know what I mean? Well, I've been collecting orange clothes for 20 years. So I've got orange socks, I've got orange jeans that I got in Ottawa, Canada. I've got multiple orange shirts and orange jackets and pullovers and an orange cap. And now I finally found some fluorescent orange sneakers. That's what you might have seen today. Maybe next year I'll treat you to that. So anyway, oh yes, I'm going to need my little spectacles so I can read this. Jim Erickson reminded me that Betty Davis said, "Getting old is not for sissies." All right, we'll try these. This book, as you know, is a collection of teachings, supposedly the original teachings of Jesus, that were written down by one of his disciples, whose name was Judas, but not Judas Iscariot. And so in Greek, his name is Thomas. So it's called the Gospel of Thomas. And many years ago, I found this material, couldn't understand it, so I asked to desire to know, what does this mean? So then I took 2 days of dictation. So I didn't write this book. I was dictated to me, and then Jim suggested that I do the sketches for it. He said, well, you're an artist. Why don't you just do that and make a whole book out of it? So that's how this came into being. This one is number 36, and the picture in here is a loaf of bread and a stone. You can see that? It's a very brief one, number 36, and it's very familiar. Do not be concerned about what you will wear. See, I was thinking orange. So this is what was added to that. Do not worry, for worrying actually produces the very thing that you have concerns about, and your fear will bring that event to pass. How can I give you bread if you are holding onto a stone, or your hand is clenched in angst? God provides all, and will feed and clothe you and nourish you from morning till night with your consent. Therefore, it is important that you be a good receiver. Consider the lilies of the field. The lilies of the field have no free will. They are God becoming. So you don't need the consent of a lily to dress it. But with us, with our free will gift from God, God itself cannot clothe you or give you a crust of bread without your permission. So don't wait for God to feed you. You decide to take a walk to get what you need, and then God will be there and will feed you along the way. It's a wonderful, wonderful journey. I want to share with you 3 true stories that I've experienced even very recently. And it all fit into this, which is no coincidence, as you know. This year, my year started out rather slowly. I had some jobs lined up, and they all fell through. So I had 3 months of non-labor, which meant also no money. So finally, I had a chance to go to work, and it was down in Virginia Beach. And I was planning to drive to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania on the way. And partway to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, my dashboard lit up like the Festival of Lights. I said, oh God, now what? I have an old rusty Pontiac that I'm driving. So finally, I got to Shamokin Dam, Pennsylvania. Do any of you know Shamokin Dam? No? Well, it's a little town about, an hour west of Harrisburg. You've heard of Harrisburg. So I'm in the middle of 6 o'clock, rush hour traffic, trucks, buses, cars. All of a sudden, my car stopped right in the middle of the road. I'm going, oh, God. Well, the old me would have been so full of, what am I going to do now, and sweating and all that. I just sat there. I thought, hey, what can you do, right? So all of a sudden, this young man pulls up alongside me in a car. He says, do you have cables, I said, yeah, they're in the trunk. He said, get them out. I'll jump you and we'll get you off the road so you won't be holding up traffic. I say, thanks a lot. Well, first of all, I'm thinking, he didn't know me, but he also wanted to get the traffic moving, so that was really sweet. Then in another moment, a state policeman pulls up behind me. Now, ordinarily, my heart would be jumping like, what have I done now? Even though you know you haven't, you do it anyway. And he gets out and he says, can I help you? I said, yes, I hope you can. And I said, well, you can see I'm stuck here. We don't know what the problem is, but, this man's trying to jump and it won't jump. And he said, well, it's 6 o'clock? He said, this is Pennsylvania. Everything closes up at 5. He said, no one is open. And now I'm having to get to Virginia Beach by the next day at 1 o'clock to teach a class. I thought, oh, gee, what's going to happen here? So he said, I know a mechanic who stays open 24/7 in this whole area. And he's a friend of mine. He said, I will stay with you until he arrives. I said, well, thanks a lot. So the one young man drove off. And I forgot to tell you, While he was jumping my car and we're holding up traffic, a woman comes by in her car, pushes her button, rolls down the window, and she holds up her cell phone. She says, "Can you use this?" I know. Now, all this is happening, you see. I'm looking in front of me, and here is a Comfort Inn. Next to the Comfort Inn is a mechanic. So anyway, the mechanic showed up. He said, "I think it's your alternator, but I don't know anybody that can do anything until sometime tomorrow." I'm going, I said, "Okay." So he got me from there to the Comfort Inn, and the car, of course, was there for the next several hours. I started making some phone calls. You know, I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do here, but I'm at the Comfort Inn tonight, and that's it. So I called a friend of mine down in Virginia. She's also one of the priests in the order. And I said, "Sharon, I'm stuck in Shamokin Dam." She happened to know where that was, by the way. And I said, "I have to get to Virginia Beach. I've got a class at 1 o'clock. She says, "I will be there to pick you up." I said, "Honey, you live 4 or 5 hours away. I will be there. This is too important." I said, "Okay, God love you." So she hung up, you know, and she got in her car. She headed up to Shamokin Dam. Well, I was getting now a little hungry. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. So I decided, well, around the corner at the Comfort Inn is one of these attached Mexican restaurants. And I love Mexican food. So I went in there, and I was still wearing my foam collar at the time, you know. And I sat down, and I'm having dinner, and I called my daughter on the phone, and I said, "Well, here's the deal. I'm stuck in Shamokin Dam. Da-da-da-da-da-da. I can't get my car. I don't know what's going to happen, but I just wanted to let you know." So the couple ahead of me in the next booth were over-listening the conversation. Well, it's hard not to, right, when people are talking? So a woman from there came around to me, and she held out her hand. She says, "My husband and I couldn't help overhearing your dilemma. Here, please take this. We want you to have a good breakfast tomorrow." She handed me a $10 bill. Right. So I'm thinking, wow. So Sharon's on her way. I've got breakfast in the morning. Nice hotel, you know, everybody was very kind. And I went around the corner to find out what time the mechanic opened. Well, he didn't open till 8. There's no way I'm going to get to Virginia Beach by 1 o'clock, even if we left at 8 o'clock, you see? I said, I'm not going to worry about this, you know. So Sharon got there like around 5 in the morning. She'd been living in a camper. She hadn't showered in days or done whatever she needed to do. And she asked the guy at the hotel if there was perhaps a room available. He said, "Well, actually, somebody just left at 4:30. So if you want to use that room, the one bed is clean, and you can use the shower. Just take it. You're fine." So she gets a free room. I know. So then I meet her at 8 o'clock in the morning after I walked back from the mechanic. He took it right in. You know, I was standing there looking in the window when this man walked up to me. He said, "Good morning." I said, "Hi." I said, "Do you work here?" He said, "Well, I do." I said, "Well, I need to get in and out of here as soon as possible." He said, "Well, as soon as I open up, I'll open the door and you come in and we'll start your paperwork." So he said, "The guy who runs this place is a really nice guy." Now, here's that stereotypic image thing going on. This guy walked up to me. He's like big like this, tats all over the place, long hair, you know, long beard and everything, sweet as can be. You know, he looked like a big old biker, but there he was. He said, "Don't worry, sir, your car will be here Monday repaired when you come back." So, left the car, Sharon and I stopped and got coffee, and we headed down the road. Well, I'm looking at the clock, and I'm going, you know. So I called the hostess at Virginia Beach, and I said, "Honey, there is no way I can get to that class to teach the ordination until maybe 2:30 at the earliest." She said, "You are not to worry. I'm a great hostess. I have tons of food here. It's all gluten-free." In water. She said, "I'll send them out to lunch. There's a park here they can walk around, and by the time you get here, they will have had a chance to sit down and introduce one another, which they never do, you know, with these things, and then you'll show up." So we drove, and nothing much happened at that point except about 20 minutes out. It was now going to be more like 3 o'clock. She said, "You're not to worry. We're right in the room. Everybody's having a wonderful time. There's still plenty of food you can eat when you get here." I said, "Fine, thank you." So I got there at 3 o'clock. Some of those people had been waiting for 5 years to get ordained. So a couple of hours delay was not a problem, you know. So I said to Sharon, I said, "Oh my God, honey, I hate to ask you for one more thing, but how am I going to get home? You know, I'll be out of here by probably 7 o'clock, and I've got to drive home. I have no car." And she's headed back to Virginia. She said, "You're not to worry. I will take care of this." So I taught the class. It was a wonderful experience. They always are. And during the break, she said, it's all arranged. We're going to the airport. There's a car rental waiting for you. We have to get there before 9 o'clock, and then you're on your way home. I said, thank you, honey. So the class ended. We got to the airport at 8:45. And there was a very pregnant young girl at the counter, and she looked at my neck brace, and I'm looking at her belly, and we're connecting, you know. And she said, well, you're a big guy. You need a bigger car than what we've got. I'm going to upgrade you at no cost. I said, well, thank you, you know. So I'm on my way home. I'm now getting really tired because I've been up and doing all this stuff, you know. So I pulled over in the parking, and I slept in the car for, I don't know, 2 hours, I guess. But now the sun's coming up, and I'm hungry. I've got $10 for breakfast. So I went and had breakfast, and I got home. Now, I've been divorced from my first wife and only wife, 20 years at least. And so she called. She said, I understand you had a problem with your car. If you'd like, I will drive you down to Shamokin Dam on Monday to get your car. I said, well, gee, thanks. Now, usually when we're alone in a car, it's like battle zone again still. Not terribly, but, you know, it was terrific. It was a good experience, you know. So now I'm thinking about all this stuff. Now, if I had been in the mode like some of us are, like, oh, no, I'm fine, I never would have got to Virginia Beach. The state policeman would have just left me sitting there. You know, it goes on and on and on. And I'm in like this little bliss thing going on here, you know. I thought, now this is really kind of nice. This is how it should be, you know. How many of you in this room are really good at giving but not so easy on the receiving end? Anybody? Okay, you're listening to this story, right? Okay. Now the next one took place on my way coming out here yesterday, or the day before, whenever that was. I was flying out of Rochester, and I got on the plane, and it was one of those two-seater things on my side. So this one's open, and then I said, oh, gee, maybe I'll get to spread out. Well, then this guy comes walking in. He sits next to me, takes a look at my foam collar, and he says, oh, C whatever, through 3, 4. I said, it's C1. He said, well, I've got L5 and 6 or whatever. And so we started talking about how we got our injuries and all that. And it was an interesting conversation. You know, then we went into that, you know how it is. You get into God and spirituality no matter where you go. So we're chatting, and I told him what I do, and he shared with me that he's an inventor, and he also does other kinds of things. And so he reached into his little black bag. He was going to Chicago to this big convention of inventors and all that. And a few days before, I was up in the middle of the night in my bedroom, fumbling around, trying to find a light so I could turn my light on so I could plug my cell phone into the charger, right? You've all been there. You think, well, why don't they invent a light that fits into that thing so that that kid invented that. So he hands me this thing. He says, what color do you want? Because it comes in blue, white, or red. I said, well, blue would be fine. I was thinking white, so no, that's too good. That would be expected. I want blue. So he showed me how it worked. I said, this is really neat, because just 2 days ago I was wondering, why doesn't somebody invent this? And there he was. So, and he's also a writer, and I write. So he said, do you have an editor? I said, well, I do. He's magnificent, you know. He said, do you think he might be interested in editing my book? I said, I don't know. I'll ask him. So he gave me his card. And on his name is Robert Tricello. Now, years ago, we're talking many years ago, when I was doing psychic readings, one of my clients' names was David Tricello. I said, by any chance, are you related to Pat in Livonia, where I'm from? He said, well, we're all related. Why? He said, did you have a cousin, David, who passed many years ago? He said, yeah, he was involved in a motorcycle accident. I said, he was drunk and he ran into a telephone pole. I did your cousin's funeral. Here we go, right? Yeah. So then we chatted about that and how much he looked like his cousin, and then we got into God and all of that. And I said, well, I learned from one of my teachers that nobody dies. We call it graduation. Yeah, this is a school. Have you not figured that out yet? And you're only here for a while. It's like summer camp, you know, then you go back to wherever you came from. So when you're done, whether you're here for 1 second or 105 years, then you graduate, and not until. So when somebody graduates, it's because their work is done. Who's going to be sad about that? Yeah, you're going to miss them, for heaven's sake. This is true. However, they finished. I guess we're still lumping along here because we're still here, right? So we talked about that. So now it's noon or something, and I had to stop over in Chicago. So I'm not hungry, I really wasn't. So I thought, I'm not going to go over and get in line and get something to eat. I'll just sit here and rest my neck, And so we got on the plane, and now I'm on the plane, now I'm hungry. I said, oh, great, because now it's like an hour and a half to Minneapolis. My little inner person said to me, I am sending somebody to you with food. I said, oh. So I'm in the plane, and once again, the seat is empty next to me for a while, and then this beautiful, beautiful black woman comes and sits next to me. And I'm facing forward, and the kid next to me is Chinese. He doesn't speak English, so there's no conversation that's going to happen here, And I don't often like to talk when I'm on a plane. People like to be left alone. So she whips out a book. It's the one about the little kid who said heaven is for real. I thought, here we go. Here comes a lesson. Here comes a lesson. So I said, do you like that book? Because it was a bigger version than the one I had. It was like the kid's story plus some testimonials from people around the kid. She said, oh yeah, I read that book and I'm reading this again because I like it so much. I said, well, I kind of do a lot of that work. She, oh really? And so she whips out her McDonald's fish sandwich. She said to me, would you like some of my sandwich? Now I'm remembering what the voice said. The OB would have said what? Oh, I'm fine, just eat your sandwich. I said, actually, just a little bit. She said, well, pardon my fingers. I said, well, honey, that's what we got them for. God didn't put forks, knives, and spoons on any of these wrists. So she breaks off the fish sandwich, which was just one of my favorites, and it was Friday. So, I'm not Catholic, but still, you eat fish on Friday. Or we used to. So anyway, now I'm thinking, okay, I've been fed. Buddhism. When Buddha sent his disciples out into the community, they took a rice bowl. And that was it. You go and you knock on the door, and you offer to give a lesson in return for food. I said, I have been fed, now it's my turn. But I didn't want to invade her space, and we sort of napped a little bit, and she read, and then she closed the book, and she sat there with her eyes closed. And then I don't know who initiated the conversation, but, we got into it, and we talked a lot about, the work. And she was fascinated. She says, yeah, my girlfriend had a near-death experience. And she talked to Jesus or something, and then she came back, and her life has been different ever since. So I said, yeah, there's a tremendous amount of people. I said, the plan was that there would be millions of people who would have a near-death experience and then come back and then tell us there's more. Heaven is for real kind of thing. I love this new pope. Frankie? I'm wanting to see him in a pair of jeans. He'll do it. He'll probably do it at some point. Anyway, Frankie now comes out and he says, well, I'm not going to judge gays. Who am I to judge? He still wears his little brown shoes to work. He doesn't live in the Vatican. He stays in a hotel. He does mass there in the morning. He goes out and he hugs babies and touches sick people. I mean, he's amazing. He's like the original Francis, this kind of thing. So I'm thinking, well, all right. He's showing the way. Eventually he will get to the point of realizing that, yes, women need to be included as priests. Yes, men and women need to be able to get married. I was watching a DVD about a month ago about this High Lama that when he was a little boy, he and his brother were running in the kitchen, and a pot of boiling soup spilled all over him and scalded him terribly. He nearly died. Now, this father had already given 3 of his primary sons to the monastery, and he wanted to keep this one to run the business. Well, the kid nearly died, so when the kid was a little bit lucid, he said, son, what can I do for you? How can I help you? He said, Daddy, I want monastery robes. He goes, oh, okay. So he got the kid robes. Kid miraculously comes around. Then one day there's a knock on the door, and there are these monks, and they bring prayer beads and bowls and all that. You know the story. They found him. They brought him back to the monastery. He eventually became the Dalai Lama's teacher. When his teacher talked to him about his spiritual growth, he said, okay, one of the things that you must do in order to be a well-rounded being, you must get married and have children. Now, this is at the time that most lamas and all that do not. It's a vow of celibacy and all that kind of thing. So he got married, had 2 beautiful daughters. He lived to be quite elderly. He was a very large man. and he said, I've seen my country disappear, one of my children disappear, but he was always smiling. Marvelous human being. So anyway, I'm looking at all these wonderful changes going on in the world. It's the end of patriarchy and all of that, which is really marvelous to go on. But there's a struggle before that finally comes around. Another true story. Now, I told part of this story, I think maybe last year. I don't really remember, but there's more. It's like, well, there's more, so I've got to tell it again. I have a very dear friend called Marta Davidich. She's Ukrainian, so she's like, what's happening here? And when I met her many years ago, she got ordained on a very stormy night. And she said, I'm lost. I said, well, where are you? I'm in this Gulf station parking lot. I said, I'm looking out the window of this woman's house. I can see you. You're not lost. Cross the street, get over here, get yourself ordained. So she got ordained. We became fast friends. So she told me a story many years ago. She called me around Thanksgiving. She said, this is Marta. I'm dying of leukemia. I said, Marta, that's not possible. I don't think I'm going to see you again. I said, what's going on, honey? She said, well, I've got diseases and they can't cure me. And, I might have told this. If I hadn't, forgive me. If I, you're going to love this story anyway. She had 5 diseases that were all attacking one another and all killing her. There was no cure from anybody. They tried everything, Finally, she had a dream one night. Now, in the dream, she said it was either a shaft, a dirt shaft, or a well. There was a tunnel, thing. And she's falling down the tunnel. Now, there's a green vine coming from the top down the side. She grabbed the vine, and she's pulling herself up to the top of the tunnel. She gets to the top of the tunnel, and what does she find? White light. She wakes up perfectly cured. I love that story. One of my favorites. So anyway, I went to see her, last year? And I see her every year in Sarasota. And we went up to the Salvador Dali Museum, and on the way home, we were having dinner. I said, would you please tell me that story again? It's like a little kid. Read that story to me again, Dad, And she said, oh, what one? I had 4. I said, what? She said, yeah, my first one, I had blood poisoning. And nobody knew what was going on, but I was out of my body, and I could tell them what was wrong, but I couldn't communicate. Well, somehow it all worked out, and she survived the first one. The second one happened when she was with her husband, her first husband, down a river in Ohio. They were kayaking, and she didn't have a life vest on. And her kayak tipped over, and it held her underwater. And now she said, I was breathing water. And then the peace came. Some of you have been through that. You know what I'm talking about. Well, then they revived her. Well, a couple years later, she and her husband are kayaking again, same river. Now, here's a tree down at the edge of the river or the creek with the roots that are also now in the water. You know how that is sometimes. Her kayak turns over. The roots of the tree intertwine in her life vest and keep her down. Now she's breathing water again. And the peace comes. This time Jesus showed up. Now don't hear this all about Jesus, because I'm not one of those guys. This could be Buddha, it could be Muhammad, but it was Jesus. So Jesus showed up and he says to her, Marta, when John the Baptist used to baptize people, he held them under the water a long time. I said, wait a minute, what did you just tell me? She said, well, that's what he told me. He said, no, you don't understand. 20 years ago, my friend Tom Sawyer, whom some of you know Tom Sawyer, I didn't know if he was joking or telling the truth. He said, oh, Chesbro, you're a Baptist. You could appreciate this. When John the Baptist used to baptize people, he held them under the water a long time. 20 years later, here's the story again. Now, what was that all about? Because John, was very adept. He was on the scene as Jesus was and all that, but he knew when to bring them up. I would not want to be that person who wasn't sure. We lost 5 today. But what did that do? That triggered their awakening. That's their first stage of a near-death experience that brings the light in, you see? Now, many of you in this room have been ordained by me over the past 28 years. And what I did for you of your own free will, because I couldn't have done it without you, was I gave you an energy, a light, a fire that went to the base of your spine that triggered with your kundalini towards your enlightenment, or you're heading towards your Buddhahood. Okay? Now, let's go over here to Buddha for just a minute. In Buddhism, there are three things that are part of what I call it the Triple Crown. The three jewels are the Buddha, or Buddha, the Dharma, which are the teachings of the Buddha, and the Sangha, which is the community of those who are on stages of enlightenment. Okay? So, what I love about this concept of Buddha, it's not Siddhartha only. Any one of you can be Buddha, a Buddha. Albert Einstein perhaps was a Buddha. Because these are beings in stages of enlightenment, if not totally enlightenment, who give to the Sangha, to the world community, concepts, ideas that help us in our spiritual growth and aspiration. I truly believe that Tom Sawyer was a Buddha in this time for us, as there are many. Many people you'll never hear about who fulfilled that role. So this whole concept of having a creator God, which the Buddhists do not have, they have causation. There was a first cause and then da-da-da-da-da. So, but within our concept of God or whatever, there is this idea of, spiritual growth and aspiration, and you can become whatever, So what I love about this concept of Buddha, it's not just Siddhartha. That was one of many Buddhas. The current Dalai Lama is considered by his people to be a resident Buddha. Now, what does Buddha mean? Well, a man asked Siddhartha after he had achieved enlightenment, they said, well, what are you, a god? He says, no, I'm not a god. Are you then a magician? He says, no, I'm not a magician either. He says, are you a man? He says, I am awake. I am awake. For those of you who have chosen to be ordained in all of that, you've got the very first step toward I am awake. God will not see you go hungry. Somebody shows up on a plane and gives you a piece of their sandwich. If you're saying, oh no, thank you, God said, look, I sent the Marines, the Navy, and the Army. It happens all the time. But if you're not willing to receive, God can't give to you because of free will. I got a fish sandwich, I got a mechanic, I got a state trooper. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But at this point in my life, and wherever I am right now, and I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else, God knows, I'm beginning to see the glimmers of I am awake. I had no angst about being stuck in that traffic. None. No angst about being late to the... She said, don't worry about it. None. And I kept thinking of, okay. Tom used to always say, look at the big picture. There's a big picture. Everything has a part to everything else, and everybody with free will cooperates or not. And that's how we do this process, So let's have some fun for a minute or two. Okay, so let's say now you're choosing to follow the Buddha or a Buddha, and your teacher says to you, okay, now you've achieved certain life lessons from the Dharma that I came to teach you, so it's now time for you to go out and teach the Dharma. You go out and be the teacher. So what you're going to take with you is just enough clothes to keep you covered and warm, one bowl, because you have one meal a day or whatever, and you go out and you knock on somebody's door and you offer, say, I will be happy to teach you enlightenment or the path of whatever in turn for a meal, Okay. That works great in the East. Got it? When do we do that over here? Once a year. It's called Halloween. Some kid in a costume knocks on your door and says, trick or treat, and you have an option here. You give them candy, they go away. But your lesson is in that, I don't know. Let's say now we have, right here around this community, a bunch of novice Buddhists in training, okay? So tomorrow morning you're getting up and you're making your coffee, you hear a knock on the door. You go to the door and here's a gal or a guy with robes on, and maybe they're orange, and a baking bowl. And they're going to say to you, I will teach you enlightenment if you will give me some food. Now here you are. You're a little bit late to get to work. You don't know this person. You're going to invite them in the house? Well, maybe you can sit on the stoop. Maybe we won't make it winter because that would really be hard. So, you say, well, all right, I've got some oatmeal, but look, you can keep the lesson. I'll feed you. Right? Now, let's say this goes on for 2 or 3 weeks, and now this person comes to your door every day. So you're expecting to make a little extra oatmeal. So they knock on your door and say, look, I'm running a little late. The oatmeal's on the stove. The coffee is in the carafe. Save the lesson. This can go on for some time. Unfortunately, in our society, in this culture we're living in today, if somebody, total stranger, came knocking at your door dressed in robes with a bowl and asking for food, I'm busy, bye. Mostly. Now, in my community in upstate New York, we have a large group of Jehovah's Witnesses, God love them, and periodically they come to my door. They have no idea what they're dealing with here. And they offer I can get their magazine or, their little thing. And so the last time this happened, it was about a month ago, after it finally stopped snowing up there. And this guy was all dressed in a suit, and this woman was in her outfit. And I knew, oh, here we go. All right, so I love to play with these people, So he said, I left our little literature in your door. This weekend, we're having a celebration in town. We're celebrating the death of of Jesus. And all I said to him was, I know he's dead. He didn't get it. He wasn't asking for food. He wasn't even asking for money. He just wanted me to come to the party, But I thought, Jesus isn't dead. Nobody is. Jesus graduated. And after Jesus, this is really fun too. Buddha's mother died when he was born. Remember that? So he never knew a mother, his mother. He had an aunt. I can say that because I'm from New England, okay? He had an aunt, and she helped to raise him. And of course, later in life, he marries and all of that. But he was basically, a single-parent kid, for some time. Where else that happened was Muhammad. When he was born, his mother died. So he was raised, and it was his aunt who basically got him to a point one day of embracing women into the faith, just as Buddha's aunt got him to embrace women into the Sangha. Yeah. So the character that I work with and have for many, many years, Melchizedek or Melchizedek, was never born of woman or man combo. Just appeared. When God wanted to appear into the human condition, boop, I'm here. Taught lessons, had disciples, and did all that work. And when the work was done, never died or graduated, but spontaneously bursted and went back into the light. All right? So we have all these amazing enlightened beings, single-parented, many of them, which is maybe part of the motivation, all coming into the earth plane to teach the golden rule in the last new age. This new age is about equality and balance. So we have a lot of people coming into this life who've had near-death experience like Tom Sawyer, or variations of enlightenment coming into it. So for everyone in this room, you have an option because of free will to embrace that or not. There's no punishment. And even as Frankie said recently, the Pope, there's no hell. There's no sin. There's no evil. When Tom Sawyer died and had an experience of becoming one with the light, he realized there's only God, there's only good. We've had a lot of press over the years. So you have an opportunity to achieve Buddhahood or enlightenment. You have an opportunity to become awake. You know what happens to a lot of people when they've had a near-death experience, when they're in the tunnel or when they're going into that part, They say, gee, I don't know. I felt like I was finally really awake, that this was the dream. And then they come back. A lot of them don't want to come back. Well, there's work to be done. My chiropractor down in Boca Raton, I went to see him when I brought this into his office, and he said, Dan, I didn't expect to see you in your body again. I'm thinking, oh, okay. So he started, putting the pins in, and we're talking, and finally, the second day of the applications of the pins, I saw this yin-yang symbol in front of me, and then the word joy popped out. I said, oh, that's kind of fun. So I talked to him about that, and he whipped out a chart, and he said, yeah, when your heart, your gallbladder, and your liver are all in sync, you will have joy. And of course, the reason those organs were defunct was because of this deal, you see. But had this not happened, I would have never written a book. I would have been down in Key West with a life partner, partying and fooling around, and no books would have gotten written out of me. I know that. You know. So I consider this a blessing. It's a gift. I haven't fully realized it yet, but I'm becoming more awake to the reality that there's everybody on this planet that here's available to love everybody else, to feed you, whether it's a fish sandwich or it's an idea or to give you their latest invention. All you have to do is say, yes, thank you very much. You know? And then that starts maybe another level of your awakening or your coming into a greater reality. Because you all have it within you. We were all born at the same time out of God's imagination. Tom Sawyer said one time, when he had conversation with God, just imagine such a thing. God said, you know, about free will, I think I made a mistake there. I probably shouldn't have done that. Well, it happened anyway, so here we are. So from the get-go, we've all had choices of free will. Now, the other things that are in Buddhism that I have learned recently is this Four Noble Truths. One, that there is suffering. Everywhere. There is a cessation of suffering. You know, the understanding of the cause of suffering, then the cessation, and then the path. When you become more awake and then you start living away from that. Well, I've known so many people who've had near-death experience and have come back from that. And basically, the cessation of suffering is a simple word. It's called yes. If somebody asks you ever, do you love yourself? If your answer is a yes, here's the continuation of suffering. From the very moment that each and every one of us as a soul was imagined by God, before the universe, for heaven's sake, we were given the opportunity to choose to love ourselves or not as God does. There's no punishment, there's no hell, there's no right or wrong. What did you learn? You made the choice, what did you get out of it? Okay? But you can be in therapy for 40 years and they finally get you to the point of saying, well, now, will you love yourself? It's yes or no. So in terms of becoming awake or aware or becoming a Buddha or a Christed being or whatever, it means you must allow yourself to receive and also be willing to give, but love yourself as God does, which is unconditional. Perhaps your dog will come close. Your cat, on a good day, maybe, you know. Yeah. But you see, they're not free will, they are will becoming. That's God in the form of whatever, you see. There's creation and evolution, I hate to tell some people, or I delight in telling some people. You know, so there's this wonderful opportunity we have to be here, to be in school, and to learn. It's like summer camp for the soul. And you're not here very long. I'll be 70 this summer. I've been here a long time. You know Moses started his work at 70? Isn't that good news? He had a speech impediment. And so when he met the burning bush and God was going to send him back to Egypt where he'd been thrown out of because he'd killed somebody, he said, you know, I can hardly talk. And he said, well, your brother's got a magic stick. Take Aaron. He'll go with you, you know. So don't let your age get in your way. You know, there is no time. We imagine time in order to facilitate whatever. I'll see you at 10:30. Well, then let's get a clock. You know, young children can't tell clocks. If it's not digital, they can't tell you the time. Well, there is no time. There's only now. Each and every one of you sitting in this room, including moi, is a result of every life that I've ever lived from the beginning of creation. And with free will, you made choices from the get-go that allowed you to become the person you are right now. And the choice is still the same. Now, will you love yourself as I do? It's either yes or no. There's nothing in between. You know, you've got nothing to lose except to say, well, yes. Here comes the fish sandwich. Here comes the invention. Here comes a state trooper. One day I woke up in the morning and I thought, you know, I would like a cup of coffee, first of all, and I want to smell a gardenia. And I would like a chocolate chip cookie. Put it out there. This was many years ago. This was before I had any sense of what was really happening in the universe. So God said to me, or whoever talks to me, said, I need you to go to see your mother today. Will you go see your mother? Well, my mother lived 8 hours away. I said, yeah, I love my mother. Go see my mother. So I got in the car and I'm driving down the road. I probably told you this story before. And there was a guy hitchhiking on the road. He had a denim jacket on, dark hair, denim slacks, had his thumb up. Well, I'm on 90, which is like not a place you want to hitchhike. I go shoo, right by him. I'm going, oh, jeez, God said there's a thumber. Will you pick up the thumber? Well, I just went right by him. So then I got to Hartford, Connecticut, and the road goes up and down and around the corner, and then you're headed toward New London, Groton, where I was from, my mother's house. And at the end of that road, of course I was going a little fast, it was the middle of the night, is another thumber. Denim jacket, dark pants, dark hair, thumb out the road, shoo, right by him. I said, oh no, twice, So the voice said, and yet you will have one more opportunity to pick up the thumber. I'm thinking, oh, I've got to get this right. So I'm driving now toward where my mother lived. The fog was so thick, I had to open the car door to see if I was still on the road. Right. Now, inside my car is the smell of lilacs. Oh. So I'm on now, like, oh, something's happening here. So I look out the window, the fog's lifting. There was a young man with a denim jacket on, dark pants, dark hair, going toward the road. He hadn't even stuck his thumb out yet. I was there, waiting. He wasn't aware of that because he was dead drunk. So I opened the car door, he got in, I thought, oh, is this my prophet? Is this a message from God? He was drunk as a skunk. He had been partying with his girlfriend and a young man who she decided to go for him and not for him, and so they threw him out. Well, he lived next door to my mother, who that day had bought a gardenia plant and had baked chocolate chip cookies. I forgot to mention, the first person who came to my office that day brought me a cup of coffee. See? So it's just as blessed to receive as it is to give. For you to become awake, become aware. And allow yourself to be the receiver and the giver. And unfortunately, we only have Halloween once a year, but if some mendicant monk or whatever shows up at your door and in an orange robe or red or green, or it doesn't matter, and they've got a baking bowl, yeah, come on in. Let me feed you. May I feed you? And they'll say, and may I offer you a life lesson? Yeah. You remember English class, the difference between can and may? Remember that? It drummed it into our little heads. They said, can means, can I help you, means, am I physically capable? May is, may I have your permission? Feel the difference there already? Yeah? Free will. So when you're working with the human condition, it's always very spiritually appropriate to say, may I offer you my Reiki? May I share with you my fish sandwich? Whatever it is. You're going to get wonderful responses. Either, oh my God, yes, I've been starving. Where have you been? Or no, I'm fine just so I am. Fine. Or yes, but they be no, and no, but they be yes. Like, y'all come back now, but not too soon. Yeah. So it's a wonderful journey. I got myself so blessed. Jim and Bonnie are some of my very best friends on this planet. And just to be able to come here, this is my 25th year coming here. And I've met many of you over the years. It's been a joy. I have a school now in upstate New York. This is our 6th year. I have 39 graduates, School for the Prophets. And out of those 39, probably 30, 25 or whatever are already out there. They're already out there with their little baking bowls doing their thing. I'm so proud of them. I don't have to see over them. I don't have to do anything but just get them going on their way. I had no intention of teaching a grad level. I thought, no, level 1's fine. Oh, all right, level 2. That's it. I'm not going on for this, 18 years of levels. So I said, oh, please, we'll come because we know you've got things to teach us. When Buddha started teaching, he didn't teach everything he knew from his becoming awake. Couldn't handle it. Do you give a baby milk or meat? He gave them milk, And maybe for the others, they went on, you know. I've watched the Dalai Lama many times. I adore the man. And whether he's a Buddha or not remains to be seen, most likely. He's brilliant intellectually. And he knows all kinds of information on different levels of ancient Buddhist texts and teachings. I mean, the guy's genius. But when I compare him to the man that I knew for 40 years, Tom Sawyer, the Dalai Lama is not awake. It's just fine. Neither am I, and all of you probably. I don't know, maybe there's another Buddha sitting out here somewhere. But what matters is that you have the opportunity to have that, and it just requires you to say yes to the process. You know, fear nothing. Those who've had near death said, I don't fear anything now. I've died, and it's easy. I'll do that again, you know. Most of us, that would be the bottom line, you know, so it's a good thing. So let me see what else is on my list here that I should be sharing with you before I... Oh, yes. These are called the three poisons. Sounds kind of, you know. The three poisons in Buddhism are greed, hatred, and ignorance. Now, in our current society, we certainly are equipped to view and experience greed in many forms. Okay? That's a roadblock in the way toward becoming awake. Hatred. Well, we finally turned the corner somewhat on racism in this country, and we now, as you all know, have a person of color in the White House. Thank God we were able to create this. You know, ignorance is not bliss, folks. It's deadly for some people. Unfortunately, those who are ignorant don't know it. So our job is to offer them some enlightenment. May I share with you what I know? May I share with you that God is an unconditional lover? You're going to get yes or no, but hey, becoming less ignorant and becoming less hatred is one of the lessons that we in this country are learning, hopefully, and around the world, you know. Greed is the lack of understanding that there's another fish sandwich right around the corner. You don't need to have 10, you just need a couple of bites. Those who have much is fine. Those who have much, much is given. But it's also the responsibility to feed the poor, to comfort the widows, whatever. It's a choice, yes or no. And then the widow has to say yes. You know how it goes. But we have in this lifetime of ours the opportunity to see greed at an apex, or so it seems. You know, ignorance abounding. Hatred, unfortunately. I am delighting in being, whatever that means right now, a gay man or whatever, to be in a society that is beginning to go beyond ignorance and hatred. And in Utah and in Arkansas and in some places where they want to take this back to the Supreme Court, it's not going to happen. Well, it might happen, but they're not going to win. You know, those lovely children who were confiscated in Nigeria, you know, because they didn't want to educate women with Western thought. You know, it's the end of patriarchy. This is just the beginning of the end. You know, and the men aren't going to let go without a fight, unfortunately. So we have lots of opportunities of watching the world become itself and realizing the integration of all things is possible now. We know the connection between the butterflies who are flying in China and the wind that flows over the Grand Canyon. You know, everything's connected. And so part of us is part of those children who were kidnapped. Part of the people who got married in Arkansas and now are being told to wait or maybe never. It's not going to happen. It's inevitable. The New Age is beginning with a series of earthquakes and volcanoes, tsunamis, etc. It'll diminish eventually, but all of that is geophysical and spiritual. Because it gets all those people out of their houses who would not talk to their neighbor or would not receive a fish sandwich. Just say, yes, thank you very much, and what may I offer you? You see? It brings the family together. We are Sangha. We are the community of believers in stages of I am awake. So it doesn't matter where you're at on that path, but that you're aware that you're on the path, for one, and that you're willing to take your life out as if it were a rice bowl and offer to get fed from and to feed the community. This is a community church. I've been here before it was a community church. I was here when they were still fairly traditional services. I was here when there were pews long ago. And it's been marvelous for me to watch you grow and remove the barriers that allowed you to not be close to one another, whether they were called pews or whatever they were. That I can sit here in my socks is a liberation. Yeah. Anyway, I probably talked way beyond my time. Yeah, I got to wrap it up. So I am so happy to be here with you and to share any of my life journey with you. And I'm sure you have just phenomenal stories to tell of your own. But just know that you are always loved. There's no hell. There's no damnation. You cannot fail in life. You can only choose to learn. Or not, but then you're still learning. So thank you so much.